Everyone, I will call this Regional Transportation Commission meeting to order. It is 9 a.m. and we will start with a roll call. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Sajid Solaria,
Here.
Ed Lawson,
Here.
Alexis Hill,
Here.
Bill Thomas,
Here.
Mariluz Garcia,
Here.
Adam Spear.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And if Commissioner Garcia could please lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of course. Please join me in the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And now we'll move into public comment. Madam Clerk.
Good morning. We first have Dora Martinez and Juan Martinez.
Good morning, Dora.
Good morning. I didn't know I was going to be first. So, Dora Martinez, for the record. Just want to thank everyone who had a hand in making the Mayan and McCarran bus stop accessible. One concern, Madam Chair, is that there's a lot of temporary bus stops, and the temporary bus stop signs are not noticeable, and they're like on a rim, look alike, and they can be moved around. So it's hard for a blind person to locate the temporary bus stop, and my dog can't read, just for the record, because people think he can read. So I don't know how, if there's a way to, I don't know. I don't, that's for the expert people to figure that out, because it's hot, and when you miss a bus and you have a dog, it's not fair.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that Mr. Bill can maybe look at other states and see what they're using and use that, or get a QR code. Some people who have an iPhone, because I can assure you most blind people will have a smartphone, they can just point to the pole and see if that's the temporary bus stop. Also for the buses, and I've been requesting this through James Gee, when we go for the bus stations at Reno and Centennial and the mall, I need to know what bus is there. And if it doesn't announce outside of the bus, I'm going to get on the wrong bus, and sometimes the bus driver, I don't know if he's sitting down or can't hear me because I'm asking what route and he doesn't answer. I'm probably talking to a chair, not uncommon. My kids would leave the room and I would talk to nobody. So I'm just, maybe you guys could make that an output announcement active so we could hear and go on the right bus. I think that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ed Lawson, for all of the prior years that you chair the committee, and I appreciate everything that you did in making the all of the sidewalk, most of them in Sparks, accessible. I love Sparks and Reno. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll work on that, Ms. Martinez.
Okay, I guess Juan, he didn't want to speak.
Okay.
And so we have Carlos Elizondo Reina.
Welcome.
Hello.
My name is Carlos Elizondo Reina, for the record. The reason I'm here is, the Harbor Bus Station, bus stop, and the one across on by the European Center in South Virginia. If you stand on a Harbor Way bus stop station, you will see the road like this here. I mean, really bad like this. And when the bus stop, And when the bus stops at a European bus stop, you see the bus like this, look like this.
Mm.
It's really bad. Then it's attention really bad. You're doing construction in other areas that really just to make it look good. I've seen that. I noticed that. And the next step is I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody. I'm just speaking of what is affecting me. I heard of some drivers that are really pushing on the schedule, and you know, it don't really make sense because of the fact that you know they're in a hurry, and at the end, you know, they wound up, you know, bumper to bumper, 3 or 4 buses right after the next one, bumper to bumper. It doesn't really make sense. That makes you wait longer because you see all this a bunch of buses, 3 or 4 buses bumper to bumper. So that pushing the schedule didn't really make sense, and that causes the accidents too. Because it happened to myself to see one of them. There was, I think, right after Keolis took over, like after the COVID-19. Yeah, I saw a bus driver hit a car from behind really bad. So I mean, then they get on your nerves, you know, being pushed so much in the schedule. Like I say, it doesn't make sense because there's no way you're going to get caught up, you know, especially the Virginia streets are trafficking. And the next one is the new traffic token transit that you put on and built in the new one. Sometimes it says scan ticket and it goes okay, smooth, but sometimes it says traffic tracker, vehicle tracker, it says, and you want to scan the ticket. I don't know what this. It's not 100% functional yet. It needs attention. You need to look into that. That's it. Just something what I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. We'll look into those as well.
No further public comments.
Thank you. We'll now move into the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? No changes. Okay. I am looking for a motion from the board. Thank you,
Move to
Mr.
approve.
Lawson.
I'll
Looking for a
second.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Motion approves unanimously. We'll now move into our consent items. Do any board members want to pull a consent item or have questions on a consent item? I'm not seeing Mr. Lawson does not. Commissioner Garcia, no. All right, I am looking for a motion on our consent, please.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you, Commissioner Lawson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. And that passes unanimously. We'll now move into item 5, our discussion items. 5.1, discuss and provide potential direction to staff regarding legislative measures from the 83rd session of the Nevada Legislature 2025. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Michael Hillerby. First, let me start with a thank you to this organization for the opportunity to work for you and represent you. Very proud to do so. And as a firm, thank you, and we appreciate the business. I also want to thank your staff, who are of tremendous help during all of this. Bill, Dale, Jim, Paul, Amber, some of them come down during the session when we needed and drag into long meetings that they had better things probably to do with their day, but are more than happy to come down and assist during the session as needed, and also do a very good job at providing information and turnaround really quickly when we get requests from legislators or need feedback on bills. And thank those of you in the legislative committee for the guidance and the meetings during the session. I think we've probably heard from a lot of people it was a challenging session. Frankly, they all are at this point. The job of getting so much done in 120 days every 2 years never makes that an easy process. Term limits, a variety of other things, and the amount of turnover at the legislature means there's a lot of education that needs to occur as well. Transportation and related issues took up some fair amount of time this session, as they typically do. I'll give a brief session overview, and I think we'll probably want to talk more about what specifically impacted RTC. We went into this session knowing that the budget was going to be a little more lean than it has been in the past. Session got off to a little bit of a bumpy start when it was discovered that the governor's budget was out of balance, and there were some issues there about where money was going to be directed and how it was going to be spent. This is the beginning, I think, of what's going to be, we're going to be dealing with for the next few years, for a variety of reasons, the economy cooling down, the lack of the federal funds we saw come in from the Inflation Reduction Act and ARPA and a number of other things over the years, and some fairly significant spending increases in 2023, some long overdue raises for state employees, but they were quite large, and that's the gift that keeps on giving and taking, depending on which side of the paycheck you're on. So this is the beginning we're starting to see of, I think that it's going to be probably more serious going in the next session. That's the general fund. We'll talk about the highway fund and those challenges in just a little bit. The dynamic of the session you all know about, this is a part of what you do in your jobs and your lives, was about a Democratic majority legislature, Republican governor. How do they communicate? How do they work on their priorities and try to get those done? Heading into the session, the governor's priority was to be sure that there was not a 2/3 majority needed to override vetoes in one or both houses, that neither house had that 2/3 Democratic majority. And that certainly, as last session in 2023, impacted the dynamic as we move forward. This session ended with a little bit of drama at the end for a whole host of reasons, particularly in the Senate, some last minute bills that created some angst with Republican minorities, kind of crashed some large bills at the end, some other things just because of time management in both houses. Some of those included the governor's major crime bill. There had been kind of a last minute deal on that Sunday and Monday, the last couple of days of the session, and that died for lack of time, as well as some healthcare bills. The film tax died that night, which was a very important bill for a number of constituencies. So that made for an interesting end. The governor in 2023 set a record by vetoing 75 bills. This session, he broke that with 87. I think some of those additional were probably due to that crash at the end of the session. There had been some deals made to move Democratic bills and some of the governor and Republican priority bills, with some of those dying at the end of the session, probably made it likely that some of those vetoes were connected there. The other thing that everyone is watching, it does not have a direct impact on us, although it's one of the things we want to keep an eye on, but will on the larger state. And that is the changes at the federal government level, particularly the most recent budget bill, potential cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, welfare, TANF, food stamps, other related programs. The Medicaid's the big one. Every state's going to be dealing with that. The legislature knew that by the end of the session. The governor didn't know what it was going to look like. Now that we have a bill passed, the most recent guidance from the new Nevada Health Authority, which was the old Medicaid, plus some other agencies that they've put in that deal with payers and patients specifically out of the Department of Health and Human Services. They put out some guidance in the last week after the passage of the bill that because of a number of the effective dates for 2027, probably provider rates and patient access issues are going to be stable relatively through this year and into some of next, but still trying to figure out what that means. There is about $1.3 billion in the state rainy day fund. I think it's very likely we end up in a special session at some point in the next several months or next year ahead of the 27 session, dealing with those Medicaid cuts, potentially others. There is some savings there to be had. And then there are some other issues hanging, particularly some of those bills that died at the end of the session that may be a priority. The governor's crime bill is one of those, potentially some healthcare, other issues. Of course, film tax credit advocates are still out there. I think if those that maybe we're hearing, there might be two special sessions, one to deal with some of those issues and one later to deal with the budgetary matters from the federal government and those cuts to Medicaid specifically. If you tried to put spending the rainy day fund and filling those holes in the same special session as film tax credits, I think that becomes pretty problematic. That's a really tough sell to tell the public, here are the cuts we're potentially having to make. Here's what we're doing while also doing that. But we'll see where all of that ends up. And again, at the moment, for what the rumor mill is worth, some talk that there might be two special sessions, one a little sooner than another to deal with issues, and potentially later when there's a clearer idea of the impact on the budget. We went also some major issues this session, as they typically are: housing and the cost of housing. Healthcare is always a big one, criminal justice, and then transportation. We'll talk about just a few of those and then be happy to answer some questions. Transportation safety was a big issue this session. We had one bill dealing specifically with us, as you all will remember, and know better than I, heading late last year. Because of some changes and maintenance issues and others with the electric fleet, we had to pull some of our older buses in. Those did not have the enclosures that the other driver enclosures that other buses did. Those were immediately ordered, but in the process of waiting for those and coming in, we did have a pretty serious incident with an attack on one of our drivers. That the Teamsters, and working with a new legislator from Las Vegas, came forward with a bill, AB 361, that would require those bus enclosures, and it also included language on criminal trespassing for people who were convicted of assaulting a driver. We worked very closely with our colleagues at the Teamsters and others on the enclosure issue. That was something we were already doing. Had that completed during the session, those had been on order, and the staff here did a great job once those arrived and getting them installed very quickly. So what we were doing has now been memorialized in law that affects the two large RTCs, Clark County and us. The criminal trespass provisions were interesting because all during the last interim, Southern Nevada RTC had been working on a removal bill, and this flew right in the face of that. So it was immediately opposed by a whole host of groups, Southern Nevada RTC, ACLU, some of the unions that had worked on the removal bill. So that was a different process. So the criminal trespass provisions were removed from AB 361 before its ultimate passage and signature by the governor. The removal bill moved on its own from Southern Nevada. Again, that was something they worked on, a bill we supported. So we do have removal language in certain circumstances that really more impacts them because they have such a large system and they have their own security force that would allow them to remove passengers under certain conditions rather than having to wait for Metro or other law enforcement to show up, because those are frankly just lower priority calls and are challenging. So bigger deal for them, but obviously we supported our colleagues. There were three, and a subject we talked about a lot ahead of the session, and appreciate the guidance from you all. There were three bills dealing with automated traffic enforcement. The most comprehensive coming from Southern Nevada, heavily supported by Clark County Sheriff. That was very broad, would have allowed stoplight cameras, speed enforcement, other things. That early on was pretty clearly not going to go anywhere. We knew, particularly in the Senate, there was a lot of opposition, including from the chair, Senator Wynn, from Senate Growth and Infrastructure Committee. That did get a hearing, but didn't go any further. Sort of going in kind of the expansive nature of the bill, or more limited. And in the mid-range of that was a bill from the AGC allowing speed cameras in construction zones. There was a bill we worked on a lot that did make it out of the Assembly, got to the Senate. We supported AGC in their efforts to do that. They worked very hard. I want to thank everybody on the team, particularly Dale, who came down at one of our meetings. A lot of opposition to that bill, spent some time educating the groups on how speed zones are set during construction, how the technology works, what best practices are. So we did work really hard, particularly Alexis Motorix at AGC, up until the last day of the session. That bill did not make it out of its final committee. It didn't move. The third bill, and the most limited, while a serious issue and one where we don't want to see children put at risk, it is limited to cameras on bus stop arms, on the stop arms that come out of buses. So not one we're seeing as many accidents. When they happen, they're obviously very bad. That's not something we want to see people doing, is passing those school buses. It's really been speeding that's been the larger issue in the school zones. But that bill did pass and was signed by the governor. So we'll see if that may provide some data and a easing of some of the minds. In our meetings with ACLU, public defenders, Fines and Fees Justice Center, and others who oppose all of these efforts, I did talk to one of the public defenders ahead of going into one of these negotiating sessions, and I said, is there any world where we get you anywhere in any of these bills? And the answer was no. I said, well, I appreciate the honesty. I think some of the legislators ultimately saw that and appreciated, particularly on the AGC bill, a lot of effort to provide accurate data and information from Dale, us, others, and movement by the AGC and the other proponents to try to get to something that was workable and could get us, again, a start and some data. Those are clearly ones we are seeing our state employees, local employees, contractors hurt and killed in those. So it was unfortunate that bill didn't make it, but I suspect we may see that again. The other big issue is funding, road funding. I can tell you there was no meaningful discussion of electric vehicle fees. There were no bills introduced this session. I think sort of acknowledging the political reality of the budget situation they were in, a governor who has said, by and large, was not going to support any tax or fee increases. It may be something that comes up again next session. There has been work over several years in the interim with NDOT, variety of other groups and organizations that were interested. We've been a part of that from RTC for a number of years now. I think there is plenty of information. Everyone understands vehicle miles traveled is going up, revenue is not keeping up with it, and the cost of maintaining and building the necessary roads. So unfortunately, there was no movement on that issue because there were no bills. The other big one was Southern Nevada's effort, continued effort to try to expand fuel revenue indexing. You remember they first did that in 2013 because they came to the legislature first. They had a limited window that they could do that. That was ending. They came last session, brought a bill that would have required the Clark County Commission to implement extended fuel tax revenue indexing essentially indefinitely by a 2/3 vote. That was vetoed by the governor. They brought a similar bill back this time, the important change being the, excuse me, the Clark County Commission still can do that and will be required to do that with a 2/3 vote, but that would extend fuel revenue indexing through 2036 and would have to go back to the voters at that point. So it would be some more opportunity for voters to see the impact, just as our community has with the benefits of fuel revenue indexing. That was one we supported, helped educate Northern Nevada members and others about the importance of that. That bill did pass and the governor signed it. Obviously, while it's focused on Southern Nevada, as you all know, the issue for us and others as they continued to face challenges being able to build the road infrastructure there that they needed, it inevitably was going to create a drain on the highway fund and it was going to affect other areas of the state, including ours. I think there was no getting around the political reality when the majority of the population, the majority of legislators from there was just going to be a lot of demand to do that and potentially cause problems statewide. So I think that is very much an important bill in that front that hopefully will help not just Clark County do that, but again, help ease some of the demands on the State Highway Fund, which has its own sets of problems that we've already talked about. We did not see the toll road bill proposal move forward for that northern route into Trick, unfortunately, not for lack of a lot of effort. So we'll be continuing to figure out what other options we have to do something there. A couple of others, like one other bill that not directly related because it won't be our project, but Senator Skip Daly did pass a bill to allow progressive design build. I think AGC called that the design build on steroids specifically for the I-80 East project between here and Trick. So with hopes of being able to move that a little more quickly now that there is some funding with NDOT. Had a variety of other governmental administration bills that we watch and get some feedback on, not ones we engage in directly for the most part. Where those have broader impact, you'll see NACO and the League of Cities and potentially the state weigh in on some of those. Governor did veto a number of those bills that impacted state works, collective bargaining, and labor, where they sort of attempted to put the finger on the scale to sort of move it one way or the other. I will stop there. Those were sort of the major issues. Again, want to thank you for the support and the staff and the board and the guidance during the session and the opportunity to represent you. It's something very proud to do. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I think you did a wonderful job for RTC. We really appreciate all the hard work. I know that it's a challenging job to balance all these interests and communicate our concerns and also work with this board. So it was a pleasure to work with you. Commissioner Lawson, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. And Commissioner Toll Road. Well, I mean, I was going to ask, how do we get on the agenda for the special session?
For a toll road?
Well, I'm just curious, like, I've been hearing you can do a letter to ask, like, for consideration on it. I'm just curious, how does that work? And I had been hearing that was...
I think there will be a long list of people submitting their own wish list to the governor. What would you put on the special session?
Right.
Very briefly, as I think some of you know, a few years ago, the voters did approve a constitutional change. The legislature can call itself into special session. They have never done so. It does require a 2/3 vote between both the party makeup. There is not 2/3 control in either house by one party, and the general relations. My joke is I'm not sure on any given day you could get 2/3 of them to vote to leave the building if it was on fire. So getting them to agree to call themselves into special session might be a little bit difficult. So I think, at least for the foreseeable future, that will be where the governor calls a special session, and in that case, he really controls the agenda. The legislature may only consider the subjects that the governor places in front of them. So he really controls that. I I'm not hearing anything that would make me think that EV fees or something similar
Or
would
toll road.
Yeah, or toll road
We'll
would
get
make
on
it
that.
on a special
I'm trying
session.
to support my colleague here.
So,
and-
Well, I think the other thing that we have got to address, we got to address it sooner rather than later, is electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
With all the Amazon trucks, that are driving on our streets for free, basically. And if you're in my neighborhood, they come by quite often. My wife being the biggest consumer of Amazon products. But yeah, it's kind of silly that we're not talking about this. And it was a conversation that started 6 or 8 years ago
Right.
and has still not come to fruition to do anything. And my understanding is some other states have put a delivery charge, $1 a package or whatever it is, that would help offset those road costs.
I think the frustrating thing for the advocates, including us, of EV, because of the experience in other states, we know how to do it. There are a variety of models out there. Some are more complicated than others. It would not really be that hard from a technical perspective to get it started and do something. It's finding the political will to do that. And the more electric vehicles we get on the road, the harder that's going to be to do. And every day that more of those sell, there are more people out there who are going to be frustrated. I had one legislator tell me, who's supportive of that, said, I drive a Ford F-150. The Lightning, it weighs 7,000 pounds or something. It's an incredibly heavy vehicle. I should be paying something. I'm not paying anything. So I think there's a realization for a lot of those. It's finding the right combination of circumstances and people to try to move something forward. But hopefully next session, I think there'll be another effort to bring something forward next session. Governor will be in his second term. And I think we'll be seeing the budget realities start to hit home in the general fund budget and more in the highway fund budget. They're just limited resources and increased demand. So hopefully we will see something move, or at least be actively discussed next session.
Or we bring something to the voters ourselves. Commissioner Garcia.
I have a question on that note. We get how many BDRs at RTC every session?
Get one.
Just one? Okay. Thank you for the comprehensive overview. You did a great
Of course.
job.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And looking forward to working with you on this special session. It's you're just the gift that keeps on giving. This year you're going to be very busy. You thought you were going to go on a break, but here we go.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much. That's what we're here for. And I did neglect to mention there were two bills that will be participating in interim studies, one on regional rail and the other on trails to transit. So one interim study and another looking at that. So that the lot of support for the regional rail idea, I think, and Director Thomas was on Nevada Newsmakers this week, and I think acknowledged what we all know. Everybody likes the idea. How in the world do we pay for it? It's just simply very expensive. We need it, but that's another one. Like expansions to freeways, a northern route in and out of Trick, a southern route in and out of Trick, whatever. How do we pay for that? So I think we'll see some of that come out of that committee and perhaps be a roadmap for that. But we'll have the staff, Paul and Jim in particular, on those two committees working on that. So there'll be plenty more to do in the interim. And I suspect more conversations about electric vehicles, whether that's led by NDOT or others, legislators or others in between.
And do we nominate to any of those committees, or is that done just through the state?
It depends on how the committee, sure, the easy answer is no, we do
Okay.
not directly. Those are appointed typically for the most part by the legislature or the governor, depending. Some of those, and I need to go back and look at the language, some of those may end up with a seat or a representative from. And I don't remember whether that language specifically that we did that or that was appointed by recommendations from potentially us to some of those committees. So it varies a little bit depending on the
Right.
committee. We'll double check that and make sure we get you the right answer.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board? Not seeing anything. All right, thank you
Great.
for your time.
Thank you
and
very
Have
much.
a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move into item 5.2. This is a presentation on the draft Central Reno Midtown Network Neighborhood Network Plan. Welcome.
Good morning. Marquise Williams, Senior Transportation Planner with RTC, here to present on the Central Reno Midtown Neighborhood, Neighborhood Network Plan. This is an informational presentation, and we'll be bringing it for approval to this board next month. So a little bit of background. This neighborhood network planning originally came out of the Active Transportation Plan, which was approved by this board in September of 2024. And that was just a comprehensive look at how to improve biking and walking in the region. So we broke that into 4 goals: improve safety, expand mode share, maintain the system sustainably, and enhance the community. And it was out of that active transportation plan that we got the corresponding program, which includes neighborhood network planning. It also includes metrics to inform the investment. So for instance, our gap analysis highlights areas where with this infrastructure, we can get the best return on investment, with that return being utilization. We also have bike level of traffic stress and pedestrian experience index and other data-driven metrics to inform that investment. This active transportation program also has a dedicated funding source. So we have $5 million a year to invest in these improvements. And we also put together an active transportation technical advisory committee. So this is a committee staffed by local jurisdictions, the school district, Northern Nevada Public Health, and it's really to make sure that what the investments that we're making are in sync with the other investments in the region. So just a review of what neighborhood network planning is. Essentially, the active transportation plan broke the region into 12 neighborhoods with a focus on shorter neighborhood level trips. So acknowledging that most of the time when people are taking a bike trip, they're not going from Spanish Springs to Damani Ranch. They're instead going from home to the grocery store or to work or school. So making sure that our transportation network reflects those priorities or those trips. And we also wanted to focus on a complete network within each neighborhood. So, sometimes we really improve one corridor, but then it kind of leaves you stranded when you're on a bike. So we wanted to make sure that you really had some way of getting from point A to point B comprehensively. So the neighborhood network plans are each broken into 2 parts. So the first part is our short-term quick build projects, and those are low cost, easy to implement, 1 to 2 year implementation timelines projects. And the easy to implement also gives us the easy to remove or easy to adjust option. And so we do have a performance tracking component of this plan. So if there needs to be adjustments, if we're not getting the improvements that we're expecting, we can make those adjustments. The second part is the long-term projects. So these are the more traditional transportation, large dollar projects. These won't be implemented by the active transportation program, but they will be added to the queue for prioritization and consideration in the regional transportation plan. So the neighborhood network plan process, and this is what we did for the Central Reno plan, we start with existing conditions. So existing conditions are what is on the ground now. That's where we use those data metrics. But we also did a comprehensive public outreach process, and we put together a steering committee comprised of local representatives and stakeholders to really help us identify the problems people see in the neighborhoods and where we should focus those improvements. The next step is scenario development. So with those existing conditions, we put together with our consultant 3 scenarios, 3 alternatives, visions for the neighborhood. We take those 3 visions to the steering committee, who tells us, what we got right, what we didn't get right. We like the first half of part of Vision A, but we don't like, but we like Scenario C a little bit more overall. So once we get that vetting process, we go back with our consultant and our team at the city, our partners at the city, and that's the final scenario design portion. So that's a real collaborative effort, seeing what recommendations we actually can and want to put forward as a result of the previous 2 existing conditions and scenario development steps. And that's what leads to our final recommendations. So a little bit more about the outreach process. This was a pretty comprehensive process. It involved 3 in-person meetings. So for the Central Reno plan, we had a meeting at the Boys and Girls Club Carano Center. So that's by Vaughn Middle School off of Vassar. We also had one at the Reno Public Market and then another one at the Reno Sparks Convention Center. We also did an online survey map, and at both the in-person meetings and the online survey map, folks were able to pinpoint locations of particular interest to them, whether it's a crosswalk that they use every day that's not really safe, or whether it's a route that they wish were improved a little bit more. They were able to identify those locations and so that we could consider them. As I mentioned, the steering committee was a group of local stakeholders. So we had staff from City of Reno, Public Works, Police, Fire, School District, local business owners, and as well as RTC staff to help us make sure that we were reflecting the problems and the issues and concerns in the community. And that steering committee was key in the selection process and in getting us great stock photos for collaborative efforts in government planning. So a summary of the recommendations, then I wanted to start this with just a primer about how impactful vehicle travel speed is on active transportation planning. And it kind of sets the tone for the recommendations we chose. So this graphic shows the likelihood of a fatality at different speeds. So you can see on the top row, at 20 miles per hour, there's a 5% chance of a fatality when there's a vehicle pedestrian crash. So a 95% chance that the pedestrian will survive. At 30 miles per hour, that jumps up to 45% chance of a fatality. So almost a 50-50 chance of a fatality at 30 miles per hour. And then at 40 miles per hour, that's an 85% chance of fatality. So speed, in this context, speed really does kill. And so that's kind of where we focused all of our improvements. So the two main improvements we're recommending here are the neighborhood byway and the protected bike lane. The neighborhood byway really focuses on traffic calming, so that's slowing down vehicle speeds through some examples I'll get into. And then the protected bike lane is on those corridors where we can't slow speed, so larger arterials, providing that separation between pedestrians and bikes and the moving traffic. So happy to report we're proposing or recommending 8.4 miles of neighborhood byway, 4.5 miles of protected bike lane, and then just a little 0.4 of a mile of the striped bike lane. So a total of 13.3 miles of improvements. So like I mentioned, the neighborhood byway improvements, these are the ones that work to slow down and reduce vehicle travel speeds. And you're going to find these more on neighborhood residential roads, smaller roads. So in the top left, you have the curb extensions or the bulb outs, which work to narrow the vehicle travel lanes and provide that visual cue to slow down in a neighborhood. The top right is the center pedestrian refuge island, and similar to the bulb out, this one just works to designate that space and signal to drivers that this is a slower area. The bottom left is a slow streets campaign, and this is a simple one where you just put signs in the middle of the road and give more obstacles for drivers to navigate. That helps to calm the traffic. And then the bottom right is a quick build traffic circle. So this is one with just a few posts and planters there. This is a good way to put in a low-cost roundabout solution. So here is a list of the corridors that we are looking to improve with the neighborhood byway treatment. I won't read through all of them, but feel free to peruse. And then similarly, the protected bike lane. So this is the separated lane. So when vehicle speeds are high, over 30 miles an hour, we like to provide separation. So on the left, you have the 2 to 3 foot posts. In the middle, you have the candlesticks, and these are similar to the ones we have on 5th Street in Reno. And then on the right, you have the armadillos. So with all of these improvements, the byways and the protected bike lanes, it'll be a matter of working with our partners at each jurisdiction to ensure that when we put an investment in, it can be maintained and that it's something that we can keep looking good for years to come. And similarly, here are the corridors that we selected or that we're recommending for a protected bike lane improvement. So for the implementation of these projects, on the left we have a map that kind of summarizes, I know it's kind of hard to read in this format, but it summarizes the improvements that we're recommending. For implementation, this is a quick build. This first part of the neighborhood network plan is a quick build strategy. So we are looking at kind of an accelerated implementation timeline. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we have $5 million annually, and we're looking to do 2 implementations per year, which leaves us at about $2.5 million per neighborhood. So with those recommendations, moving into the design level, which is being managed by engineering, we did a lot of planning level cost estimates, and so we're going to work to implement as many of these projects as we can while still being respectful of the budget. But yeah, now comes the handoff process to the engineering team, and I know they're already starting their design process, and we're targeting an implementation of summer of 2026. So just to recap the next steps, we're here today to give this presentation. The public comment period opened on Monday for this plan, and it's running until Friday, August 1st. rtcwashoe.com/neighborhood is where you can find the information, the draft plan, as well as an interactive map. If people want to pinpoint comments. So we'll be back, like I mentioned, in August for approval on consent, and then looking forward to implementation in summer of 2026. Just wanted to give a nod to the Central Sparks Neighborhood Network Plan. We'll be doing a similar presentation to this one in fall of this year. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And do you have anything, Commissioner Lawson? Commissioner Garcia?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think our constituents will really appreciate anything that has an accelerated timeline when it comes to transportation or improvements in that regard. So I think all of these projects sound super exciting. On one of the bullet points, you specifically, under the short-term quick build projects, you said performance tracking through data collection. What does that look like? Is it on the jurisdiction to contact RTC? Are people reporting things through Reno Direct or the Sparks app? How do you collect the data? Is it on staff to do that?
So the way we're looking at it now, and this is the first neighborhood plan, so we're still, figuring out the process. But the strategy we're doing going forward is partnership with UNR, and they do LiDAR collection. So we're going to set up about 20 locations in each neighborhood to collect, and they can collect all sorts of things: speed data, near miss data. And we're going to work with them to report on that, or collect that, analyze it, and report on it in-house.
Okay. Will that generate concerns or, I know people are going to have opinions once these things start popping up. Where do we direct people to express those ideas or suggestions?
I think there's an email. I don't want to misquote it. I think it's neighborhoodplans@rtcwashoe.com, but you can find it on rtcwashoe.com/neighborhood. So that's kind of our program email address.
Thank you.
And I am very excited about this because it is an area of my town, my part of town, and I ride my bike a lot in this area. And I was just curious because I think a lot of these recommendations are wonderful. On scenario 2, are we just not wanting to people to ride on Liberty, essentially, by not doing anything on that particular street?
I wouldn't put it like that, but I would say that we do want people to ride on the streets that are included in the neighborhood network. So we're kind of signing off, or we're looking to make really comfortable, safe facilities on the included corridors. And the fun thing about this program is in 5 years, we're going to come back around and do another effort in each neighborhood. So, looking to include more corridors at that point.
Right. And just you heard the way we came up with scenario 1 was the input that we heard from the public, and then the audits that you took, those walking audits. So
in addition to the data metrics. And then really focusing on trying to create a network. So, not trying to improve one individual corridor,
Right.
but making sure that whatever we're proposing is a whole comprehensive network approach.
Great, great. Well, great work. Any other comments from commissioners? Not seeing any. Thank you so much. Looking forward to approving the final project at our next meeting. Okay, we'll now move into item 5.3. This is a presentation on the draft federal fiscal year 25 to 29 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, RTIP. Welcome.
Good morning. Graham Dollarhide, Planning Manager with RTC for the record. This morning I'll be presenting on, as you mentioned, the draft federal fiscal year 2025 to 2029 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or RTIP. So the RTIP represents a prioritized program of scheduled and fiscally constrained transportation improvement projects designed to achieve the area's goals and objectives established in the long-range plan, the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP. The RTIP is federally required to be updated at least every 4 years. However, RTC maintains a biennial cycle to help streamline the process of updating the RTIP. An update differs from an amendment in that it is used as really an opportunity to review all project details as opposed to just those that require changes at a given point in time. So really more of a cleanup, but does include changes that are more significant. Another function of the update is that it provides for the programming of additional years worth of funding. So in this case, RTC is looking to migrate from the current version of the RTIP, the FFY 2023 to 2027, into the FFY 2025 to 2029 RTIP, where some projects will drop off and other new ones will be added. An air quality conformity analysis is not required in this case, as no changes to projects involving the addition of capacity have been included, in addition to or beyond those that were modeled as part of the RTP update, which was completed earlier this year. It's also important to highlight how projects flow from that long-range RTP outlook into the short-range programming of the RTIP prior to moving into the agreement and implementation phases of a project, in order to understand the new years of the RTIP and how they're populated with projects. So projects in the RTP are essentially divided into 3 buckets. There's that top priority bucket, which is the projects proposed to be completed within that first 10 years of the plan, and then the lower priority projects, which are projected to be completed within the subsequent 15 years of the plan. And then you have the unfunded projects, which have yet to be assigned an implementation timeframe. So because the RTIP covers a 5-year horizon, obviously not all projects will move from that first 10-year bucket of the RTP into the 5-year RTIP. So to determine which projects move up, RTC follows the same project prioritization process it uses for the RTP, which is the graphic there at the bottom of the screen. RTC develops the universe of projects, a set of scoring criteria, and then scores the projects to create a prioritized list of projects, adding in programmatic and transit needs while taking stock of projected revenues. And then finally, a fiscally constrained project list is developed using a harmonization process that considers feasibility and other budgetary considerations. So what is changing with this update? Most project changes are primarily administrative modification level or very minor type changes that don't meet the threshold of established by RTC and state and federal partners for a formal action. Again, more along the lines of that cleanup type spirit, but there are a relatively small number of the amendment level changes, which are those larger scale changes that would meet those pre-established thresholds and would otherwise require a separate formal action if not for this update. And then there are several other projects either marked as complete, being removed altogether, or added as new. And I'll cover the added and removed projects at a higher level in subsequent slides. So 2 projects being removed from the RTIP are the Moana Lane Multimodal and ADA Improvements Project and the Rosewood Trailhead Project. The Moana Lane project was the lowest scoring project within that first 10-year bucket of the RTP project list, received that lowest score in that bucket as part of that RTP prioritization process. And so that project is being removed in favor of other higher priority or other higher scoring projects. However, that Moana Lane project will remain in the RTP in that top tier of projects or that first bucket of projects. The Rosewood Trailhead project was funded through RTC's most recent Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program award cycle, as you may recall, but it is being removed on account of the lead agency not being able to accept the funding at this time. For new projects being added to the RTIP, they were, as I mentioned, prioritized as part of the RTP process. They are fiscally constrained and they incorporate the budgetary and feasibility considerations that I mentioned previously. Overall, there are 13 new projects being added to the RTIP with a total cost of approximately $285 million. Additionally, there are a few programmatic projects being added. Those projects recently awarded under the Transportation Alternatives Set-Aside Program that weren't already in the RTIP are being added. Additionally, a bus stop improvements program is being added. A similar program, you may recall, was completed a couple of years ago. This iteration will make improvements to bus stop system-wide with specific locations to be identified through the short-range transit planning process. And finally, the active transportation program identified as part of the active transportation plan is being funded beginning in FY26. That'll be the first year that the program is being funded. As you just heard the presentation, with the first set of neighborhood network plans to be moving into design and implementation. So there are a few steps that need to be taken before this update is finalized, including approvals at the RTC board, state, and federal levels. This draft update is open to public comment as of July 14th and will run through August 12th and is being advertised through various media outlets. The RTC has also obtained feedback from CMAQ and TAC and will consider comments from all sources as appropriate prior to a public hearing for the final document scheduled for the August 15th board meeting. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Garcia?
No questions.
And Commissioner Lawson? We have a really exciting 5 years before us from the RTP. So I cannot wait to get moving on these projects. Hopefully we can find some additional funding to get them going. But I think this is an exciting list and cannot wait to share this with the community and hear their feedback. So with that, I don't think we have any other comments, but looking forward to adopting this soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move into 5.4. This is a presentation on the 8th edition Regional Road Impact Fee General Administrative Manual and the RIF Capital Improvement Plan to the Planning Commission, acting as the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee and governing body of each participating local government for adoption. And this is an action item. And welcome back.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and fellow council members. My name is Jeff Robrecht. I'm an engineering manager with the RTC. I'm here to provide and discuss the most recent update to the Regional Road Impact Fee Program, or RIF, and why we're undergoing that effort. And so kind of before I begin, I recognize there's going to probably be a lot of acronyms in this presentation, and RTC has a lot of acronyms in general, so I do my best to kind of streamline it and make it understandable. So a little bit of background, and before we get into the changes of the Regional Road Impact Fee Program, I wanted to kind of provide a quick summary of what it is and why we use it and how it's used. So as for example, when a new development comes online, the local agencies collect the fee through the building permit process, and then those funds are transferred to the RTC. And we at RTC use those funds to build regional road capacity improvement projects. That's a little kind of summary of new development comes in, impact fees are charged, and improvements are made to our community. The program itself has lots of advantages and some limitations. The advantages are it allows development to pay its fair share, and it's viewed as an equitable system, and it's been supported by our community. This program has been in place since roughly the 90s, and a lot of our development community is very familiar with it, and it's provided a lot of great improvements. The limitations is principally it can only be used for capacity related improvements. So those funds that are collected, we use them on capacity generating improvements. They also cannot be used for operating cost, maintenance expenses, or non-capacity improvements. The program is governed by NRS 278B, which allows each local government to enact impact fees into their local ordinances. Furthermore, to administer the program, the local governments of Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County have entered into an interlocal cooperative agreement with the RTC for RTC to administer the program. And then the program kind of has those two general main documents that help give us some guidance. The first one's the General Administrative Manual. That's really the procedures and processes to administer the program. And then the Capital Improvement Plan, which really outlines the methods and the backbone of how we calculate the fee itself. So getting back to the update itself of the 8th edition, RTC is responsible for initiating this review. Per the ICA, we're charged with doing that. The review process starts following the update of the most recent RTP, or the Regional Transportation Plan. And that plan is used really as the foundation for our work in this process. It identifies the list of capital improvements that are necessitated by and attributed to new development in each service area. And service area is kind of a key thing that I'll talk about a little bit later. In addition, the 8th edition was developed through the RIF Technical Advisory Committee, and we started that November of last year. The committee provided active input and guidance throughout this update process, and that committee is comprised of members of each local jurisdiction of Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, as well as planning commissioners from those jurisdictions, and members of the private industry who represent building interests. So this is kind of a workflow of the overall process, and I'll kind of talk through each kind of color a little bit individually. And it really starts with the red on the left side of the screen, with understanding the land use assumptions and where growth is occurring. We do a lot of work with TMRPA to understand that. It then flows into that foundational planning process that RTC performs through the travel demand model and the regional transportation plan. And then it gets into the blue side, which is really the impact fee calculation and understanding the impacts per service area to get to that ultimate kind of yellow bubble of the RIF fee by different land uses. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about each color group and how we understand and develop the fee structure. So we use the consensus forecast that's developed through TMRPA to understand what is possible in our community, from where future housing is going, what PUDs are out there, any tentative maps, and how our region is more or less growing. We then tie that into a measurable unit, and we have to, per NRS, have a measurable unit of how we're calculating and understanding the change of use. And so we use a thing called vehicle miles traveled, or VMTs, as our standard unit of measurement to create this link between kind of that supply or that roadway capacity and the demand, which is that traffic generated by new development. So we combine all these VMTs of number of vehicles traveling on the road for their distance, and understand that the travel lengths to get an average VMT. Next, we look at the travel demand model done through the RTC's planning processes. And this is used to determine where those capacity improvements are needed on the regional network by time frame and on the trip distance on the regional roads. So you can kind of see there's some orange sections of that map on the left, and that orange sections are the routes that a trip takes place on the regional road network. We aggregate this across all the different zones and land use zones and roadway network in our region to get an average trip length in the North Benefit District and the South District. The differences of those I'll talk about, I think, in a second. Sorry. So that gets us kind of the growth side of the model. And then now we look at the cost side of the model. And the cost side is, again, the capacity improvements that are included in the 2050 RTP. So that's all the yellow, orangish lines on that map. And it's really focused to the first 10 years of the RTP. We're not looking further than the first 10 years in this process. And so we compare, or we allocate impact fees by service area. The capital improvement plan has 2 service areas, a north and a south, and they're governed, or they're limited by I-80, separating those boundaries. And also the fees collected in a service area are only able to be used in that service area. So fees collected in North Valleys can be used anywhere north of I-80. And so this slide kind of really starts to summarize all the work and analysis that those earlier processes get us to. So when we look at the cost side of it, the RIF share of growth in our community is roughly $149 million. The proportion of those improvements between the north and the south service area are roughly 60% and 40%. And you get to the 89 million and 60 million. The VMT growth, which is the growth of new development in those areas in a unit of VMT, is the numbers you see there of roughly $250,000 and 160,000. And we take that RIF share by service area divided by the growth in the service area to get $1 per VMT in each service area. And then we apply that to the different types of land uses in our region and of how we're kind of separating and organizing this. And so we look at it in 4 major categories of residential, industrial, commercial, and office and other spaces. And we apply the VMTs to an average trip length based on international, or the ITE, which is the International Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which organizes and calculates average trip lengths based on different units, land units. And so in summary, the comparison from the 7th edition, which is currently underway, to the 8th edition is the fee structure overall increases by an average of about 2.1%. And to kind of give a little bit more detail of that, we like to look at single family houses, and that has increased by roughly 2.9% for the north service area and 2.94% in the south. Other changes to the documents include a revision of the administration organization responsibilities section, and that's really just to organize better the items in the ICA, how some other things were organized in other documents, and just putting that nicely into the general administrative manual. And then we made sure we had alignment with local land use definitions and local ordinances, and aligning with terminology in the most recent RTP update. So just kind of cleaning these documents up for future use. And so next steps, a part of this adoption process. So I'm presenting to you now, and then I plan to present to the local planning commissions and city councils and commissions. And today my request is that you approve staff to continue this adoption process for ultimate adoption in November of this year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Garcia, do you have any questions? Commissioner Lawson? And obviously, a lot of work went into this. This is very well thought out. I think, at our individual boards, and you'll probably hear this when you come to speak to us, there's a lot of frustration about we're building so much and we're not keeping up with our infrastructure. And this is part of that solution, but I know that, we're talking about adding capacity, and there's old road networks that, we've inherited and we have to also improve. So I just am curious what your thought is on the best way to address those concerns that we hear from the public as we develop, because obviously we can't add capacity unless there's additional folks out there that we're serving. So, and, you know, keeping up with that, I think is something that is on the top of every community member's mind. I was talking to someone who lived in Wingfield Springs yesterday about their frustration, and I know that in the north that you see that that's where the development is happening, mostly in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the regional road impact fees is one funding source of lots that RTC works with. And to be honest with you, if we truly looked at all the traffic that development was generating, RIF wouldn't, the fees would be very high. Astronomical. And so what we're doing with the RIF program is really trying to find that balance of how do we look at all the other RTC funding sources, include this as a funding source, and try to serve that need. So to your point, it is a very complex and long-lasting program that is really useful, and it's a good tool. So
Absolutely. Okay, well, this is an action item, so I'm looking for a motion from the board.
To approve direction to staff to continue with the adoption process.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you, Commissioner Lawson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move into 5.5. This is a report regarding regional road maintenance needs and available funding to perform roadway maintenance activities. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Christian Scholnoff, for the record, Director of Finance and CFO for RTC. The timing of this topic fits quite
Yes.
well with the other presentations we've had today. I'll start with, this is a massive report that is included in your agenda packet. A lot of work and time went into this, and I'm going to hit very high-level summaries. If you want the nitty-gritty detail, it's in there by agency and then aggregated as well. But I'm gonna kind of highlight some of the key points and be mindful of our time today. So this was a long process. It's a study that's unique to RTC. We weren't looking for an outcome here. The direction from the board was to take an inventory and understand the regional road maintenance needs of every jurisdiction within the RTC's MPO boundary, how those are funded, and how those potentially relate to one another. Every jurisdiction has their own management system and understanding of what their needs are, but there was no aggregated source of that for the region. So that's really what the intent of this study was. There are some recommendations provided by the study, although not a direct request. Some did come out of it just by default. So we started this back in 2024 during the budget hearing at the request of Mayor Sheevy, and also the direction of the board to go ahead and engage with the consultant to take this inventory and do the study. The size of this effort required us to go through an RFP. It was a competitive selection process, so developing the scope, advertising, and making sure that we had ample time for people to respond, reviewing those responses and selecting the vendor. Took almost 9 months from origin to selection. We were lucky enough to get a response from a vendor, NCE, who works with all the local jurisdictions in some manner, and also Kimley Horn partnered with them on some of the financial aspects. So two vendors that are very familiar with all our organizations doing this work. We're lucky to have them. We did award them in January of 2024. The contract came to you folks in April of 2024, and then the real work began. So NCE and Kimley Horn took about 6 months to go through a data gathering process. I just want to emphasize the collaboration that your staff had in that process, and I am thankful to all of your jurisdictions for the engagement. All of the information either came from publicly available information like your ACFRs, your budgets, but then there was also just a ton of back and forth with your day-to-day operations staff, your finance staff, your public works staff. So it really was a collaborative team effort. Everything you see in the report came directly from the jurisdictions or the publicly available information. And I just want to emphasize that everyone had the opportunity to review the contents of that before the draft report was compiled. to make sure that we were representing the information that we gathered accurately. In January this year, we did receive a draft report. There were some minor edits that we needed to make. Presentation, we tried to consolidate some of the items up front to really get to the heart of what the maintenance study is saying. We received that report back in April. I will just present the entire report to you today. So this is the conclusion of this part of the phase, and so we'll move on from here. Some key findings, and not surprising, I think we've talked about this quite a bit at the state level, at the regional level, and even at your local level, that there really just isn't funding sufficiently available to cover all the needs of roadway maintenance. Certainly there's funding shortfalls in other areas of government as well. But if we look at just roadway maintenance, signal timing, street sweeping, snow plowing, landscaping, the works, if you were to combine all the resources of NDOT, local jurisdictions, RTC, if we all pooled our money together, it's still not enough. So that's really the takeaway. When we look at what resources are available, there's dedicated tax sources through fuel tax, that all of which are being put into use by the local jurisdictions and RTC. In addition to that, everyone is putting in additional money as well. So whether that's through general fund dollars, franchise fees, ad valorem taxes. In the case of RTC, we put in additional sales tax funding. Everyone's putting in more than just a requirement to get the roadways maintained, and there's still a shortfall. So today's deferred maintenance activities, if you look at all the jurisdictions, excluding NDOT, and I'm sorry, this was more regional, the combined total of that today is around $600 million of work that needs to be done that we're just waiting until a later date to do. And if you look at the next 10 years, there's going to be an additional $800 million worth of roadway related work only that has a budgetary shortfall. So this is not speaking to your general budget. This is just needs that are going to exist in roadway specifically. Total, you're about $1.5 billion worth of funding over the next 10 years that we need to find if we wanted to complete all the activities that are necessary within our network. So when we look at fuel tax, we all share in the fuel tax distribution in some way. And I just want to point out that all those distributions are statutory. No one gets to pick where those funds are going. They're all distributed based on different sections of NRS and how the law has been applied over time. RTC, Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County all share in the distribution of both the base tax rate and index tax rate for roadway maintenance. So any changes to funding and the way those are distributed would have to take a legislative action. There's nothing that we can do independently to allocate those differently. And I want to start with the good news here, and I don't want to alarm. So regionally, our roads are in pretty good shape, right? So we just had the infrastructure report card come out for Nevada. We got a C grade that's passing. I think if you look at your peer states, there's some discrepancies. Some are doing better, some are doing worse. We have some unique challenges in Nevada due to geography, lane miles, high-speed travel, freight, that other areas just don't have. We haven't taken full advantage of some of the taxation or other funding mechanisms that other states have. We talked about EV fees earlier. 39 other states have an electric vehicle fee or HEV fee on registration of some sort. Nevada does not participate in that at all. If you look at the East Coast or even Utah to the east of us, not too far away, has other mechanisms related to tolling, power charges. Our property taxes are fairly low. Other jurisdictions have larger property taxes going to roadway maintenance. So we're challenged on the funding side and then also on the geography side. When we talk about our region specifically, we've experienced exponential growth, which I think we've all seen here over the last 20 years. So we have kind of competing resource requirements for capacity and maintenance. So we have to satisfy both of those needs. And if you look at our RTP, that's really an attempt to do that. We have specific maintenance activities budgeted in there, and then the remainder of our funds go to capacity and other improvements. So we're fiscally constrained in what we're allowed to do, similar to the local jurisdictions. Again, we are in good shape on our roadways, but they are overall declining as a network. That trend's anticipated to continue. Funding is not growing. We're losing vehicle or gallons sold year over year compared to population growth. So even though our revenues are increasing, it's on a lower base. So we're getting more users and less revenue per user, and that's going to contribute to that condition decline over the foreseeable future. The study did point to a lot of cooperation between the agencies, data sharing. We have agreements with the state and local jurisdictions to do signal timing and to do different maintenance aspects between jurisdictional boundaries. Points to good cooperation between the agencies in doing that. Pavement maintenance specifically is challenging. You really have to know what you have and the timing it's due and what the best treatment is and how to get the best bang for your buck. That's a complicated formula. All the jurisdictions have different levels of maturity within those programs, and as those grow, we'll be more effective at delivering maintenance at more cost-effective levels. But there's really just not a lot of savings in maturing those programs. It's helpful, but it's not the answer. There's unique maintenance needs and asset ownership between the jurisdictions, not surprising. If you look at Washoe County, the more rural areas, geographically spread out, you have interesting things like culvert maintenance, and in town you have striping and bike lanes and things like that. So RTC doesn't even own any roads. We just build them and hand them off to the jurisdiction and pave them. So it's really not a cookie cutter, one size fits all problem between the jurisdictions. We all have our unique operational challenges. Again, there's some cost saving measures available. Really, the study pointed to geographic deployment of maintenance activities, collaboration between the entities, better understanding of our maintenance conditions and inventories. And again, those are marginal cost savings efforts that just really do not solve this problem, but things we will take away from this report and look at as well. So when we look at the PCI, this is a pavement condition index. I think there's a general consensus between all of the jurisdictions that anything over 70, we're doing pretty good. So congratulations to us all, we're above that marker. If you look at RTC, they're the most heavily traveled roads. They're feeding the other jurisdictions' roads into the neighborhoods and the industrial centers. We want to keep those PCIs high because they're getting the most use and service out of them. And then there's various levels between the agencies due to use, geography, and roadway types. So again, the recommendations was not an ask of the study, but we came with some, right? So we want to put them out there. I'm just thinking about Keolis and Don Swain. So if you think about your PMP database as a cost-saving measure, if you have a large inventory or fleet that you're trying to maintain, understanding what parts are in that, how often they get rotated, and what the most cost-effective method of purchasing and deploying those parts is very important in saving incremental cost. So that's a recommendation that comes out of the study for all of the jurisdictions to get a better understanding of what's in their inventory, how to best apply treatments, and how to get the best savings from those deployments. There's some different and new ways to test conditions of pavement that are not always in play. We can look at some radar and different pavement condition measurement tools versus the visual inspection that we're doing now on a rotating basis, maybe to get a little quicker data so we can be more reactive, less time consuming. And then back to the PDMP or the pavement management database, kind of enhancing decision trees. So maybe spending all the money today isn't the best option. Maybe doing a small treatment on this road today makes it last longer in the long run. Maybe spending all our money today does make the best option. That's all through a logic tree or decision tree within these pavement management systems. So running different scenarios to see what the best outcome for different jurisdictions was one of the recommendations, and just kind of bolstering up those different decision-making options. Some cost-saving treatment types were mentioned. I will say most of them were in play in some way at the different jurisdictions. It's just kind of a matter of time before they wind up in everyone's hands. So there was some room for improvement in the databases, understanding inventory that may have fallen off. You see things in some pavement management systems related to a parking lot that's no longer in use, or something that's not getting actual roadway, going through and removing items like that. I'm happy to say one of the recommendations that came from this is to continue on with a project that RTC and local jurisdictions and NDOT's already started, which is the ITS Strategic Master Plan, where we're really looking to consolidate some of the functions of signal timing and traffic flow within the region. That it recommends that we continue hitting those bullet points that were highlighted in the SMP. And again, we're doing that now. Data sharing, again, knowledge is power here in saving money. We all do a great job of that. There's like a pavement group. I'm sorry, Jeff, I don't know the name of your pavement group, but they meet and discuss the region's pavement condition and treatment types and things that they can do to improve on that. But then again, to just really hammer home that the real thing that came out of this is that we need more funding. What we have today is not sufficient to do all the things that need to be done. So the timing of that is great. We have recently engaged the Gwynn Center to do a study on what are some of the policy options here locally. I know we've studied it to death at the federal and state level, but really this gets down to what can RTC, Washoe County, Reno, and Sparks do locally to solve some of the funding issues, whether it be related to alternative vehicle replacement of fuel tax or just adding additional funding sources for roadway needs. So we'll bring that back to you next month, and then we'll look for some direction on what actions we should take out of that. So as I mentioned, next steps is the Gwynn Center study. We'll see you in August with that. We'll continue working on the ITS Strategic Master Plan and implementation of that. As cost-saving measures do become available through various treatment types or deployments, certainly look to take advantage of that. And then just working with the local jurisdictions and internally on enhancing our pavement management system databases. So with that, there's it's 150 plus pages of report. It's heavy. I encourage you to read it though. It's really quite interesting. I learn something new every day. Learned a lot of new things in this one. So I'm happy to answer any questions. If they get too technical, I have some friends in the audience that can help.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawson?
In this, did they identify in Sparks, I know we look at roads that are, you call it PMS, we call it PCI.
PCI, yeah, it's the pavement condition index. So I'm sorry.
But anything below, and I forgot what the number is, like 60, where you can still get away with a slurry seal and extend that life on it. Have we identified those below whatever that number is?
So each agency has different markers for what's an acceptable use or treatment, and not one's right or wrong, right? So there's different tolerance levels from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, as well as a different categorization of, a 60 might be acceptable in one jurisdiction, whereas a 70 is acceptable in the other. On the aggregate, everyone's measuring overall conditions similarly, but the tolerance levels are slightly different. Treatments deployed are slightly different, but we're all using the same language, which is the PCI.
Yeah, and the reason why I throw that out there is because I know and I'm going to have the numbers wrong, but like a slurry seal, that'll extend it for 5 to 10 years versus a complete road redo is huge. Like $1 a square foot to $14 a square foot.
You're very close on your numbers, if not right on, sir.
Yeah, I only talk about this once a year, so I'm surprised I'm that close.
So that goes back to the decision tree. enhancements. So certainly slurry seal is way more cost effective, but as you mentioned, it has a shorter time frame than a road construct. So there is a sweet spot. Get on top of it early or wait late, right? And then that's all very dependent on what funding you have to do those things too. So if you're attempting to improve the overall condition of your network, you might go out and slurry a whole lot of streets. If you're trying to attack the worst condition sections of your network, you might go reconstruct a few streets. And so each jurisdiction has their own methodologies of selecting those streets to maximize the resources that they have.
So has the RTC identified those roads though? And what is that number? Is it below 60 that we do a slurry seal, below 40 or 30, then we do a complete rebuild?
So I actually have a slide on that if we want to pull it up. Jeff, maybe you could speak to it.
I'm just getting to that we identified those streets because it is obviously a lot cheaper to do a slurry seal than a rebuild.
Yeah, so from the RTC side, we identify that on an annual basis when we do our project selection. Every jurisdiction does their slurry seal program annually, and so we're constantly looking at how do we do as much as we can from a slurry seal standpoint. And to give you an exact, like a PCI 70 or a PCI whatever, we'll leverage the slurry seal because of its cost effectiveness as much as we can. It more so comes down to the applicability or the suitability of the road. So if there's a lot of potholes or other things going on, it's maybe not a slurry seal candidate. But if it's generally smooth, we'll absolutely slurry it and keep that cost-effective treatment going.
But we have those roads identified though?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Every jurisdiction.
I know we do in Sparks. I wasn't sure if RTC had the same list.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
But to the mayor's point, we all do it differently from
I would say
slide.
on the margins.
Okay.
They're very similar. You're deploying the same types of treatments. It's really just a matter of timing.
But this is, Michelle, could you put the final slide after Christian's questions? There's 2 more slides. I think this is the one you were talking about. Let's see. Is that it?
There we go.
That one. Yes, it's that one.
So this probably better answers your question, Mayor Lawson, is when we apply which. And then just for acronyms everywhere here, PCC is the Portland Concrete Cement. Correct.
But this is where you're talking about the decision tree of we're not all consistently doing it. We're doing it differently is what you're saying.
True, but your needs are very different as well.
Yeah, we have rural roads, obviously, we're in the county.
Right. You have hundreds of miles of roads to deal with. You're going to try and treat as many of them as you can.
Right. Which is why we only do the surface seal, because that's all we have capacity for with our very little money that we invest in our roads. Because I think our roads are a D when it came to the board, and so it is something we're trying to find some funding for. Commissioner Garcia?
Madam Chair, my great job. This is a very intensive study, final report, very deep. Did our staffs already get the final report yet?
Yes, they did about a month and a half ago. We had planned to bring this report last month, so they got it about 2 weeks before our prior meeting.
Okay, so they're currently digesting it as well, and
Oh, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, and then again, throughout the process, so before the report was even compiled, they did draft memos to the agency, like, here's what's going to be in your section. Do you agree? Did we represent this correctly? So not only in just seeing the final report, but throughout the process, they've been heavily involved.
okay. Well, I think I'd like to see. I'm really looking forward to the Gwynn Study Center, the Gwynn Center study that's coming to us. But I think it's on us to go back to our local jurisdictions to communicate all of this great work and all these findings that we had. So if there's a way to kind of layer in some of the elements that were found in this final report, meld it with the policy recommendations from the Gwynn Center study, I think that would be an excellent presentation to have at all 3 jurisdictions if we can kind of keep that in mind
Absolutely.
during the fall.
Yeah, they do go hand in hand for
They
sure.
do. Okay, thank you.
I love that idea, and maybe that could be part of, Bill, I'm forgetting, do you do an annual update to each one of the boards?
I try to annually, yes, meet with
Okay.
each board and
So maybe that could be part of that
Certainly.
presentation for us.
As we're in the thick of it, talking about budgets already. Yeah.
I love that. Great idea.
if I can, just two comments I wanted to share with the board. One of them was that one of the things I committed to Commissioner Reese, because he had asked a question when we first had this on the agenda, is that I would meet with the three managers collectively so that the issue can be on the table with all the jurisdictions in the same room talking about the same thing. But I do think the idea, we hadn't really, I think, set that out, but, you know, given the direction the board is looking, we'll plan on doing a presentation to each of the local governments. The second thing, which is really probably best demonstrated by this last exhibit, is there's this issue when you talk about when you look at it as RTC as a regional agency, which implied in RTC is consistency and standard, right? Like we treat all jurisdictions the same at a regional level, but each of you have your own ability to kind of pick once you get down to your roads what you're going to do. And it kind of highlights the challenge, if you will, of regional perspective versus local. As it sits now, there's a major part of the roadway network that has been set aside and is yours, if you will, at local government to decide how much and how you're going to do it. And so sometimes there's a conflict when we have these conversations between a regional standard and a local standard, but as it exists now, each of you have your own discretion on how you maintain your roads at the local level. And the reason I bring it up is we often have this conversation about what's a regional road and what's a local road. And there's an inherent push to try to get everything that's local up to regional. But the big trade-off in doing that ultimately would be there'd have to be a regional standard. So you would lose that ability at a local level to decide where, when, and how you handle your local streets. I don't think we're there yet, but I do think that chart in this conversation is a good reminder point to share that that's really the dynamic here. You know, we have a consistent level for RTC. We don't manage or we don't influence the local level. That's up to each local government.
And do you have anything else, Commissioner Lawson? No. All right. Well, yes, this is fascinating. I can't wait to see the Gwen study. I'm like so eager. I was like, Bill, when is this coming? And it's coming in August. I know for Washoe, at least, we have supplemental government service tax as an option for roads. And I know that that's going to probably be one of the recommendations from the Gwen Center. But I feel for the cities because I don't know, they don't have quite as much flexibility on the revenue piece. So it will be great to see that. I'm very eager. But great work on this. And yeah, it is fascinating and a little depressing because we don't have enough money to fix all these issues. But we're not New Orleans. I went there recently and it's potholes every piece of roadway.
So I would just say if we compare to other jurisdictions, depending on what your metric is, we're not at the bottom, we're not at the top. We are doing the best we can with what we have, and our overall condition is quite good.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, thank you for ending it on a positive. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move in to 5.6. This is a presentation for the need for multi-county transportation planning and cooperation and provide input and direction regarding options for pursuing formal organizational structure in partnership with adjacent counties and other agencies. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a long title to what I think can be a fairly succinct conversation. What I'm asking for, the reason I'm presenting this today to the board is it's a major policy conversation that I think is timely. I'm not asking you for any action, but really just to get your thoughts and opinions on, is there anything we should be doing or advancing to have a more robust regional conversation, extra regional, I guess I would say, related to transportation. So I wanted to run through a couple of slides that maybe focuses on why we're even talking about it, and then end with some some concepts of how we can deal with it, and then leave it open to the board for conversation. So, Christian, if you would. This first graphic is a reflection of the geographical boundary of RTC's MPO. And the reason I put it up is you'll see with the next slides, this is our responsibility by law and by organizational structure. It's the geographic area that you all manage, sitting here as the RTC board. As you well know, there's a lot of things going on beyond that boundary that I just showed you that impact transportation, either directly in terms of the roads within our MPO, or indirectly in terms of impacts to the citizens that live in our MPO. So the first one, and probably the biggest in terms of scale, is the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. We've had many conversations about that. I would characterize, for those who haven't been paying attention, that we have 500,000 people living in our MPO, and projected to go to 35,000 jobs at Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, with very few people. It is? I thought it was. Okay. So needless to say, a very large employer sitting, if you will, kind of isolated, with one road, Interstate 80, between us and those jobs. In addition, at a much smaller scale, but still one we need to be aware of, in Fernley, there's obviously job growth there, but there's also a fairly large Victory Logistics Center, which at least my research is somewhere near 5,000 jobs to add on to the jobs at Trick. Somewhat different in the sense that Fernley actually has some housing and population, but I think one would argue the scale of their housing probably isn't commensurate with that number of jobs. So again, more stress on the transportation system that gets people to and from work. And then there's the issue of Lake Tahoe, which, as we all know, particularly the chair who's very involved in it, has its own unique governmental structure with multi-counties and 2 states sorting through transportation issues. But we do have, and that's what's represented here by this red line on State Route 28. We have a portion of the road that goes around the lake in Washoe County. So even though it's outside of our MPO, it is something that does impact and influence how we respond to transportation. And then lastly, in terms of giving it context, we've had conversations, this started probably a few years ago, but are ones that we're involved in with the northeastern part of California. As we all know, these areas, Susanville, on down, they're part of our catchment area for our airport. So at least from the standpoint of macro transportation, we know these people that live in these areas and businesses in these areas do come to the Reno-Sparks area, if nothing else, to catch flights in and out. But we have, again, a single corridor, US 395, that connects us to that area. And there have been discussions about growth and the impacts of population growth, but also freight that are basically on the horizon. So if you can go to the next one. To talk, identify the current agencies that are actually dealing with this. Obviously, the state of Nevada, NDOT, has the transportation planning and oversight for the whole state. That's a fairly large task in the sense of, geographically what they have to deal with, as well as the volume of roads that they have to manage. We work closely with them in terms of what we do as transportation planning, but the question is whether in and of themselves, on their own, is kind of the future, or if we need to, in a smaller set of Nevada, look at a more structured planning conversation. You can see, of course, in our county, there's Washoe County is an entity, Story County, Lyon County. Those are the ones that we've been talking to and probably the closest to us physically. And then Tahoe, I would say the most recent conversations and the largest in quantity have been with Placer County. but those other counties obviously do influence and connect in terms of transportation and how it impacts us. And then at the regional level, we do have TMRPA, which is our state structured regional planning entity dealing with all things planning. And then there's TRPA structured specifically to deal with Tahoe. So the point of this slide is just realize how many organizations kind of touch it and who's doing what. The question that I wanted to pose to the board really is represented by this slide, which is there something that the board thinks we should evolve to or create in terms of a new transportation conversation? And so I've listed a couple things that are traditional. One of them is what we are, which is a metropolitan planning organization. So there's 4 in the state. Carson City is a MPO, and then TMRPA is an MPO. So the only area that I showed in that slide, and to be honest, I'm not sure what it is in California, but you have to have at least 50,000 population in order to be classified as an MPO. And ultimately, the governor decides in a recommendation whether or not an MPO is expanded. I've had some preliminary conversations about the interest, particularly with Story County and doing an MPO, and it hasn't been received quite well, but not surprising because that's a very structured, legally designed organization, and probably one that attracts a lot of concern and fear about being incorporated into a formally structured entity. So that is a model, though, where theoretically we could expand the MPO to go into Story and Lyon counties. There's also the traditional interlocal agreements that come out of NRS where we could, working with other counties, we could create some kind of structure in terms of a formal planning conversation. There's council of governments, which are another form of governmental entities that can be created for governance purposes. And then lastly, at kind of a smaller significance or complexity is just an advisory committee where we could get together a defined group of people to talk about transportation. And the end goal would, of course, to be common understanding and common interest on what the needs are in our greater region, but also hopefully alignment on, like we often do here, and that NDOT has to do all the time, prioritizing what is important to us and how do we deal with it. So I did want to end that this is not meant to be a question to circumvent or to not acknowledge that NDOT doesn't serve the whole state, but just the recognition, which we talk about often, is 73% of the population in Southern Nevada. We're lucky to have Sajid and Sandra here, but that's what we're struggling with. It's only probably going to get more challenging. Any attention and resources we're going to get up here is a constant battle with others in the state that might want their attention. So with that, I have no predetermined outcome on this. Just wanted to see what the interest in the conversation was with the board.
Okay. And Commissioner Lawson?
I think it's absolutely needed. I think you start at the bottom of your list, though, with looking for agreements. But I think the conversation needs to happen. Fernley has the ability to double in size. And the things that I've been out there to see, and if Mark IV goes ahead with, I could see that happening fairly quickly, especially if they find an alternative power source. I think that Fernley could double in size pretty quickly. We have the lithium loop that is predicted for 50,000 more jobs in the state of Nevada. They got to process that lithium someplace. I mean, I've heard that they want to do it on site at the location, but who wants to live in the middle of nowhere, Nevada? And the nearest town is Winnemucca, which is an hour away. So it makes more sense for that to come to Story County. So we could see these jobs continually growing in Story County and Lyon County to where people at the end of the day would rather live in the place where they get services. We have the hospitals, the doctors, the schools, all the infrastructure already here. So rather than living in nowhere, Nevada, it would make more sense for these companies to move into the Story County area. So with that being said, I mean, with 35,000 current jobs there, you start processing and recycling batteries and all the other things, you know, we could have 60,000 people working out there in Story County in the next 15 years or so, 10 years, as we see this thing just take off. So along with needing taxes on electric vehicles, we have a great industry. I think we're in a unique situation too with Story County only has 4,200 residents and they have 35,000 jobs currently. You know, so you double that to 60,000 jobs. There's still only 4,200 residents. I mean, they just don't have that much land. Where they're predicted to grow is on the Highway 50 corridor, which is still a 45-minute commute over to the Tri-Center. And once again, you're in the middle of no place. You got to go to Carson for your groceries or Fallon. You know, so we are the place of choice. We are going to be the destination where people move to. And I think we need to look at that and we need to have those partnerships. And yes, I agree that nobody wants to be roped into a government program, an MPO, where they wouldn't have any say-so or very little say-so when they control their own destiny. But I think at the same time, planning for them and their jobs and the people that work out there is just as important as to the ones that live with us. So I'm all in favor of this, but I think it just starts with conversation.
Mhm. And Sajid, I don't know if you want to add on the NDOT perspective on this.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. As Bill said, yeah, we are always partnering. Whether you can take our NDOT role with other counties. This is only a few counties Bill mentioned, and the rest of the counties, how state is working with it. So I think it's a good effort, a good thing to do. But we're always help to move forward this effort. I think if that's something that you guys decide to do.
Great. And I'm curious, Bill, what is the benefit? I mean, I agree with Mayor Lawson on we need a more formal structure with Story. I'd like to see that we have a more formal structure with Story and we can bring in additional revenue for doing that. I'm assuming that in MPO, we can do that because of the planning process and the federal government would recognize this partnership and we could seek grants together. I think Story County does need support and help, whether or not they want to go through the bureaucracy of being in an MPO with Washoe. I think it makes sense, but I was just curious the benefit of that.
I don't know if I can quantify the benefit. Obviously, when you add your MPO, the scale of your MPO grows and the number, it inherently increases the potential for revenue, but it's not a guarantee.
Right.
So from the monetary side, I don't know that we're well placed to give you any indication there's going to be a benefit. I think near term, it'll be an expense on our part if we lead it because we'll have to be the ones carrying it and funding it. But I do think long term, to the extent we all understand the issue, we all get on the same page on what we're going to do, it's going to help us, with the conversation at the state level, because there'll be multiple parties in agreement on what needs to be done. And I do think it'll help us on the federal level because we'll have more concurrence in the state of Nevada, which I often hear when I meet with our federal delegation. They're always looking for, how's everybody together on the same page on what we need to do for Nevada? So it would help us there. So I think long-term it'll help us. I can't really present to you any near-term or resource addition by doing this, but I think until we have the conversation, we really don't know what the outcome's going to be.
But if they were to enact a similar gas tax that we have in Washoe County and a similar sales tax, that would obviously need to be done legislatively. I'm assuming just making them an MPO wouldn't automatically do that, but potentially there also is revenue there if they want to join the.
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways, not the least of which is the conversation that comes up frequently at the state level where only Washoe and Clark have an index fuel tax. And so we hear frequently, I know all of you are sensitive to people saying, well, I'll just cross the county border to get cheaper gas. And you have to ask if there's a regional transportation need, is that really the right answer? Like people escaping paying their fair share. That's just a small version of the conversation I think we can have that needs to happen. I don't know for a fact, but I do know every county in the state is allowed to have a 9 cent fuel tax, but not all of them use it. So that might be a starter, right? If there's a larger conversation about the needs, that might be impetus for maybe some of our partner counties to deal with it. I don't really want to put that on the table because that sounds like a threatening thing in what we're trying to do. I don't think we're just trying to have the conversation now, but hopefully out of that, there's more resources put to the issues that the people who live in our county are experiencing.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree 100% with Mayor Lawson that the discussion needs to happen, and I would like to see our RTC be a leader in convening these conversations. I'm not sure what mechanism we need to go with or what the appetite is for those different options. Thank you for laying out different options. I think that's really important to acknowledge. We don't have to get locked into a certain way of doing things. We just need to talk, and we need to talk now. Because I wasn't around, I'm not as familiar with the Trick and the history of Trick, but Tesla was the largest tenant back 10 years ago, right? Were there any conversations that happened here regionally, whether it was RTC driven or by the counties that you're aware of, just for the context of this conversation? Like, did we have the foresight to have the sit down and chat about this huge industrial center bringing thousands and thousands of jobs and what implications that would have?
I can only speak, and the question to me, I can only speak from my personal involvement. I was at the city of Reno at the time, and I don't remember any formal or detailed conversation.
Okay.
I think it was mostly between the state and Story County.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad Sandra's in the audience. So I'm not aware, but I thought there was a session a few years ago to have this coordination effort done. I don't know if there was any update on that, or was there any, what happened to that, I guess?
There was a bill put forth by Senator Daley to have a coordination of the counties, but it was state-run, and none of us wanted to be involved with it. So consequently, it died.
And I think at the time when Governor Sandoval brought Tesla to Nevada, we were so desperate for jobs. I don't think we envisioned that it would be such a drag on our services. And so, there you go, a success. There's a positive way of framing it. And so I think you're right, though. I think we're in these positions so we can make things better. And so people in the future can say, oh, I'm so glad that commission pulled us together and did this, had this forethought to see how we could better serve the community. So I'm with you. I think we need to move forward with whatever the formal agreement, informal agreement would be great. And maybe we have a joint meeting with Story County. I don't know what the most appropriate thing to do to move forward is. And your thoughts on that, Bill?
So I think the best next step would probably be to have a formal conversation with leadership, both from the staff and the elected level, address personal conversations. So before we have a board, it'd be a smaller introduction that way to see what the temperature is, which may or may not. I'm kind of thinking right now, maybe we don't bring NDOT in because every one of us, anybody we talk to is going to have a perception about who we are and why we're there. So I think maybe a less threatening, if you will, conversation between you as the chair and maybe another board member, myself, going through each of the counties and kind of see what the sentiment is.
Right.
That'll help us define a process to go forward.
And on the Tahoe piece, I really appreciate Washoe RTC being a partner and recognizing that, yes, they are part of the MPO, but obviously we have TRPA and Washoe County and all these other counties and the 2 states that we have to deal with. But I appreciate you being at the table for the public transportation. I'm hoping that with the RTIP that we just approved, that will be also helping with some of the improving the bus stops that are there as part of the MPO. And so I don't know do you feel like you need a more formal structure with Tahoe, or is what we're doing working?
I don't have a good answer today.
Okay.
I think that's another one we need to explore. We've been, with your leadership, we've probably been much more involved directly than we have in the past. I don't have a good sense of where to go with it right yet, but certainly, based on this conversation today, we'll engage heavier.
Okay. Thank you. Any other board comments? No? Do
I
you
want to
have-
volunteer
Okay.
to be part of that conversation.
Volunteers as tribute.
There you go. Perfect. That sounds great.
I do talk with them quite often. I was up there a couple of weeks ago in Story County, just talking about some other issues, but, they realize they're changing.
Yeah.
And it's not easy for their residents to see they're changing because they're not directly involved in the center itself. But, the commissioners understand.
Okay.
Great. So you feel like you've got enough from the board? Okay. Any other comments? Not seeing any. Thank you so much. I'm excited we're having these conversations. Thank you for your leadership on this, Bill. All right, we'll now move into item 6, which are our reports. We'll start with 6.1. This is an update from RTC ED, Bill Thomas.
Thank you. So exciting news, which I know the board will be glad to hear because you led this. As of today, there's more than 300 children have signed up with the RTC Youth Pass. It's great thanks to the board for supporting that and working with the school district. We're very excited about it. Easy for me to say that. Jim's going to be the one that's going to have to manage it, but I know we're working very closely with the school district. And, even as recently as this morning, talking to Commissioner Garcia, there's some things, some wrinkles we're going to have to iron out. And there's also been a lot of communication, which you all are aware of, from the charter schools. So they're on our mind. We're not ready to answer it. We will be answering it in the future. But I just wanted to share, because I knew you all would be excited to hear that many children have been signed up. Just by way of information to the community and to the board, RTC continues to coordinate with local emergency management agencies for training and exercises. We use our vans to transport simulated patient actors to St. Mary's and renowned medical center in the recent earthquake drill. RTC and Keolis also provide a bus to Reno SWAT to train the breaching and resolving of hostage crises. These training exercises are very valuable to help prepare us as a community for the times where we're called on to use our resources and our skills in a real emergency. So just a reminder, when the Davis fire occurred, that RTC served as an important transit provider to move people out of the fire zone. So it's not something normally that's on top of mind, where we're moving people around our community, but it is an important part of what we do as an agency. A recent success by our team is the FTA completed its review of our environmental determination for the 4th Street Station expansion. So I'm pleased to announce that we were granted a categorical exclusion under NEPA, so we can move forward with our plans to update, modernize, and expand 4th Street Station. More to come to the board in the near future. I would put out on that one that we're still looking at not only expanding the facility, but also potentially increasing our partnership with Downtown Reno Partnership to integrate more activities into the 4th Street Station. We successfully submitted a grant application to FTA for a low-no emissions through the low-no emissions program for the bus and bus facilities funding round. We've asked for $21.5 million in federal funding to purchase 19 new diesel electric hybrid buses. And this, the local match will be $5.4 million if we're successful. We're hoping we'll hear some good news in the near future from FTA. It looks like, in terms of all of the funding activity that's happening at the federal level, that this program will continue to be funded, the bus and bus facilities program. So it was a good sign that the NOFO was put out and that this application process was opened in terms of an indication of this administration's willingness to move forward. So I just want to thank Jim Gee, Jeremy Latin, and the RTC team for working quickly to put this application together and get it submitted. We have started a call for projects to open our public transportation improvements for seniors with disabilities program. The applicants must be private nonprofits, local government authorities, or tribal governments. We're using, as we have in the past year, local sales tax in place of the FTA Section 5103 dollars, but the program is essentially driven by that FTA Section 5130 program guidance. There's a maximum of $1.2 million in funding that's available, and applications are due by noon on Monday, August 18th. In your packet, you'll find, and I think Mr. Hillary mentioned this, a thank you letter from MJ Maynard Carey, who's the Executive Director of RTC of Southern Nevada. She did thank us very much, and particularly you as the board, for our partnership with them on the 2025 legislative session, and particularly noted Mike Hillerby's involvement, engagement with them down in Carson City, and how important the success was of their AB 530 extension of the index fuel tax in Clark County. So I just want to draw attention to that. I'm sure all of you saw that. May was National Bike Month, and we had the opportunity to take a tour of the Kiwanis Activity Center and bike program to see the great work that this nonprofit does. Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, for using some of your discretionary funding to help Kiwanis and Biketopia, in which RTC participated. In addition, the League of American Bicyclists awarded the RTC with a silver award as a bicycle-friendly business. This is due in great part to our continued support of employees who commute to work regularly. We have quite a few that do that. Once again, RTC partnered with Washoe County, KOLO 8 News, and Sparks Target for the Stuff a Bus for Seniors event. This year, we collected more than $10,000 of items to donate to seniors. I wanted to, at this time, introduce Ashley Hurlbut. I don't know why I tripped over that. Is Ashley here? No? All right, we put her to work. Good. Good job, Dale. Ashley joined the RTC Engineering Group on April 21st as a new project manager. She comes to RTC after working as a local consultant and as a resident engineer for NDOT with expertise in geotechnical engineering. Ashley's a registered professional engineer and a graduate of the University of Nevada, Reno, with degrees in civil engineering and masters in business administration. So I'm sure you'll be hearing Ashley's name as she gets engaged as a new employee on some of the important projects that the board has approved for moving forward. In addition, I want to welcome Moen Hassan. Is Moen here? No, he's busy working too. Okay. Moen joined the engineering team as an intern for the summer. He recently graduated from the University of Nevada, Reno, and he's working on his master's degree. He's had previous intern experience at NDOT District 2, where he worked with the traffic team. So we're glad to have him help us and support us in our important transportation efforts. Some recent promotions I wanted to share with the board. So the Finance Department promoted Nelia Bellin to Senior Accountant and Roseanne Orozco to Accountant. I'm very proud of those two employees being willing to step up and advance their careers and the support they're going to be giving to RTC as an organization. Nelia has been with RTC for 9 years and has consistently contributed to her department's success. Roseanne started in the planning department at RTC in 1998 and moved to finance 7 years later. So Roseanne obviously is well connected on the operations of RTC, and we're looking forward to her being successful in her new role. And then lastly, I know I have a lot, 2 months worth of notices for you all. I want to congratulate LaShawn Ford. LaShawn? No, he's not here. Vanessa Lacer and Jamie Perino. I know Vanessa's here. I don't know if Jamie's here, he's not. For reaching their 1-year anniversaries. LaShawn is a project manager in engineering department who's passed the 1-year mark on May 20th, and you'll see and have seen him very active in the ITS program. Vanessa, Director of Planning, who's done an amazing job. Particularly, I just want to acknowledge publicly, which I have before, in the RTP. She stepped in late in the game and brought forward a very high-quality project in a very short amount of time. And then Jamie, who was a year ago for our safety and security administrator, and he really stays on top of all the safety needs, which are often not visible, but very important to not only our customers, but our employees. We're happy that they've made it through the first year of their employment here, and we look forward to the contributions and successes in the years to come. So with that, I will end my report.
Thank you. And could you email the board that senior transportation grant opportunity so we can make sure we get it out to organizations that may be interested? Any questions for our ED? Not seeing any. Great. We'll now move into item 6.2. This is update from Paul Nielsen, RTC Government Affairs Officer on federal matters related to RTC. Welcome.
Thank you and good morning. Paul Nelson, Government Affairs Officer. So as you know, President Trump signed the reconciliation bill into law this month, and it really has minimal impacts on transportation, mostly clawbacks of the Inflation Reduction Act. And it also raises the country's debt limit to avoid financial crisis. The House bill included a tax on hybrid and electric vehicles, but the Senate did take that out of the final bill. THUD Chairman Sam Graves says he will attempt to put that back in when the time comes for EV and hybrid fees in the surface transportation reauthorization bill. So now that that's out of the way, Congress is changing and looking forward to appropriations. We are happy that THUD held markups for its appropriations bills and did include our CPF request of $6 million to go to the three jurisdictions for street rehabs. So it'll be $2 million apiece if we are successful. So we're just hoping that that'll get across the finish line once the final appropriations bill is passed. The August recess is right around the corner, and then Congress only has till September 30th to pass this budget. So we do expect a short-term continuing resolution. Secretary Duffy sent a letter to governors urging them to join DOT's Safe Roads initiatives. The focus is on non-freeway roads. So you're looking at more things like intersections and streets where they're really focusing on visibility, things like signals and signage on the intersections and along the roadways. DOT's Build America Bureau updated its TIFIA policy to allow projects to sponsor up to 49% of eligible costs through the program. Previously, that had been capped at 33% unless it met certain transit-oriented development standards or if it was part of the infra or mega grant programs. And that is all for my report.
Great. Well, fingers crossed on that grant. So,
Yep, just got to get past the finish line now.
yes, thank you. All right. Any questions on the board? I'm not seeing any. All right. We will now have our update from Sajid on NDOT. Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I think it's still morning, right? Good morning, everybody. I wanted to kind of start off with continue with exciting news that we had an event last Friday. I want to thank Chair Hill, Mayor Lawson, and Lieutenant Governor, and many other representing City Council from City Sparks, and a representative from Senators Rosens and Catherine Cortez Master's office to joining us for the ribbon cutting event for Pembroke Highway Phase 1 project. So really, it was, thank you for joining us for that event. It was really another example of partnership with RTC and NDOT that have collaborated throughout the design of this project and construction for this phase. So I know there's many more projects to come, but this is another example of great partnership with RTC. So it's you can see out there the great work is done and public is pretty happy, I hope. Again, the next one, just a quick update, as you have been hearing in the news media as well. We are continuing to make progress on our US 395 North Valleys project. Recent updates that we're sharing is major, as of last Wednesday, our southbound lanes of US 395 between North Virginia Street exit and Clearacre have been shifted into the center to facilitate the construction of the new southbound lanes. So again, there's a lot of activity going on, progress is being made. We always ask motorists to be aware of the new traffic patterns out there And more information is, again, we have a hotline and project website. So just a reminder, these things are happening, construction's going on, so be aware, and hope to see this project to come to complete next year. Another reminder out there, we have some recent bridge inspections in the county jurisdiction here. Again, as Christian, you mentioned about the report for ASCE that they gave for the Nevada, I just wanted to correct, it was C+. We'll take the plus as well for the infrastructure, because the bridges were inspected and given a rating of B-. So they looked at 8 different categories. Again, we take pride of our roads and how they rank. Nevada is among 4 states in the nation who got this grade, C+. All the other states were below C or still struggling. So why I'm saying this, again, bridges are critical to that infrastructure, and our inspection team does go out and inspect all the bridges, state-owned, non-state-owned bridges throughout the year. But summertime is more daylight, and they have more opportunity to inspect those bridges up in the county. So I think last week they inspected the I-80 bridges at Bird Eye and Sierra Street Bridge. And also they provide all these more extensive, data that to the agencies if they're deteriorating or they need some attention. And some of them are inspected every 2 years, depending on the nature of the work inspections. Mostly the routine inspection is done every 4 years. So this is, again, just our crews out there, be aware, they're out on the road, and you see them inspecting the bridges. So again, this is another example. Inspections can help the owner identify important improvements that need to be done. So just making everybody aware on that. And last slide that I have, I wanted to kind of, again, update the major project that everybody's eyes on it, as well as its well-needed project, is I-80. Vista to USA Parkway. We held our virtual public meeting, and today is the last day if anybody wants to make a comment. We received quite a few comments, I would say online. The virtual meeting and also the in-person meeting was well attended. The NEPA should be addressing those comments, I would say this summer, which is we're almost there. We're trying to address that. And as a department, we are targeting to get the RFP out to get our progressive design builder on board. We're targeting to get that RFP out by the end of this month and hoping to have the contractor on board by the end of the year for this very exciting project out there and well needed. So that is with my update. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you so much. Exciting. All right, we'll now move into item 7. This is commissioner announcements and updates. Does anyone else have an update for us? Mayor Lawson? Nope. All right, Commissioner Garcia. All right, thank you very much. We'll now move into item 8, which is our final public comment. Madam Clerk.
No further public comments.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for a great meeting. We are adjourned at 11:13.